Good Wednesday morning. It is Mondays with Mark on Wednesday. I'm here at Green Bay Botanical Garden checking out the beautiful Schneider family grand garden and all these native plants. And it's got me thinking a little bit about sustainability and sustainable maintenance, landscape maintenance practices. So I want to share a couple things that we've been doing here at Green Bay Botanical Garden, especially in this garden that's like a little different than normal. So you probably all know one of the big things you do or can do in the fall is like cut back your perennial gardens. You know, your annuals will die, they won't take the cold, so you usually kind of rip them out of the ground. But the perennials you can cut back now in the fall, and we do a lot of that here because we have so many bulbs in the ground, you know, that they would obscure the bulbs, the old foliage of the plants. And also in the springtime, it can be kind of wet in the beds, you know, with the snow melting. If there's a lot of snow, then it's wet, and then you're compacting the soil in the bed. So those are a couple reasons you would do your cutback now in the fall, that you don't want to compact the soil in the spring, it's wet, and you also want to get that debris out of there so that your bulbs can poke through. Now, a reason you would want to leave it all up is because it has, you know, some interest in the winter for us if it doesn't get crushed by the snow. And there's still some pollinator value late in the season. We can see there's like a lot of bumblebees and different things still using these late blooming flowers like asters and goldenrod. I mean, we waited all year for them, so why would we cut the things down right now, of course? And the grasses also have that nice texture. The seed heads, they change some colors. So those seeds also can provide food for birds and other animals in the winter months. So those are some of the reasons you might want to leave it up for the winter interest for yourself, you know, for the pollinator habitat still late in the season, and for the food value for different animals, birds especially in the winter months. So one other quick thing that we learned is I've been reading a lot about, you know, cutback and different books by Doug Tallamy, and one of the interesting things that we started doing after hearing Roy Dibley talk at Northwind Perennial Farm is he said, like, you know, what ecosystem do plants live in 3 inches of mulch in nature? Well, no ecosystem. So, you know, prairie plants and things like that, they actually live in their own debris. So one of the things that he advocates for is like cutting back the foliage and like leaving it in place. There's some vehicles coming. I'm gonna stop for a second, let these vehicles go by here, and then I'll get back to it. That is our light show setup here. They're working on setting up the garden of lights here, so they have some pretty loud vehicles and big stuff to drive around to bring all those light frames out. So anyway, what I was saying was, like, there's not an ecosystem where plants like live in mulch, in essence. So one thing we did here in this grand garden last year is we actually cut it back in parts. We took our hedge trimmer here, using our proper safety equipment of ear protection, eye protection, hand protection. And we actually like would cut it back about 3 times and left about a foot or so, you know, maybe 6 to 8 inches or a foot of the plant foliage there. But the other stuff we just cut back and let it filter down to the ground. So in essence, this plant material becomes the mulch. So you don't have to mulch, so that's like a good benefit of doing that. And by leaving up the bottom foot of the stem, according to some of the studies in Doug Tallamy's book, like 90% of the insects that overwinter in stems are in the bottom foot. So that's a good thing to think about, using science to not cut it back all the way to the ground so that you have the benefit of the plant, you know, that you would get if you left it up all winter long for winter interest and everything, but cutting it back at this time of the year so that we get our bulbs and everything can grow through there. So we kind of did an in-between thing where we cut it back, but we didn't cut it all the way back, and then we left this as the mulch, so we don't have to mulch it. So those just a couple ideas. The other thing is, like, there's seeds here, so we left these seeds so they'll actually seed out and kind of like propagate this prairie type planting throughout here too. The other thing is, if you do want to cut it back, what we did in a previous year is we actually cut it back, but we lined out all the material along like the edge of the wood. So like instead of one giant compost pile where the stuff would break down and decompose, we actually kind of like laid it out so that we thought maybe there'd be more likelihood that these insects and things would survive in there to increase the biodiversity in our landscape. So, you know, by doing it that way too, you're also doing that thing, increasing the biodiversity by leaving those insects to overwinter and then be the bottom part of the food chain. So those are some of the things we're thinking about doing. So another sustainable thing is we do use the gas-powered hedge trimmer to cut back. You could do it by hand, you know, if you have a smaller landscape. You know, we take care of your tools a little better too, though, because these are pretty rusty. But you know, you can cut it back. You just remember the thing about it is that it's going to be more work, because instead of one cut at the bottom, you would be doing it like 3 times and cutting it into like 6-inch pieces. So it's a little more tedious that way. But the other thing that we've been thinking about doing and haven't quite yet is looking at some of these options from steel and other manufacturers that have battery powered devices. You know, so that could be a way that we could be a little more sustainable by not using so much fossil fuel to do our cutback. You know, of course, our energy, we would want it to come from a plant that isn't using a fossil fuel too. So that's like the next step to think about, is like, where is that energy coming from? Like a nature-wise program or focus on energy thing. We should think about that, so we think about where we're buying the energy to power the battery. Haha. So right, it's not just as easy as one little thing switching to gas to the battery. You got to think about what's powering the battery to get you to use it. So anyway, a couple ideas about the cutback side of things. That's a big fall maintenance chore of perennials. So now I want to mosey on over to this other area and talk about another big job that's done in the fall. I'm thinking you might be able to guess what it is. Any ideas? Rachel, thoughts?
Something that starts with an L.
Something that people, shall we say, peep at in certain parts of the country, including this state of Wisconsin. It is, dun-dun-dun-dun, leaves! Leaf raking. So, this is a job that people do that takes up like a lot of time and energy, and we do a lot of it here too. And one thing that we've been thinking about doing is, in certain areas that really, you know, we have in the past always cleaned the leaves out of this area here by Memorial Grove. But after reading Doug Tallamy's book again, what I learned was that actually, like, you know, we think about a monarch butterfly and like the chrysalis that it puts on the milkweed, and that's actually pretty unusual. Like 90% of moths and butterflies like pupate actually on the ground or on leaves that fall to the ground. So when you get rid of all these leaves and you burn them, or you compost them, or you shred them, or you bring them to the curb for the municipality, you actually are like killing all those things that overwinter. So you're actually decreasing the biodiversity. So that was pretty eye-opening when I read that book this winter. I'm like, oh man, we got to figure out how we can do a better job with all this stuff. So one of the things we're going to do is leave the leaves alone in this area here, and let this become more of like a forest kind of ecosystem type thing, where the leaves, you know, are there, and then everything, the insects in the pupa can overwinter there and then emerge in the springtime and be a habitat on the ground for everything. So that's kind of a new thing to think about. You probably can't do it maybe in all parts of your yard, but you might want to think about how you could do that maybe in some parts of your yard that are more like, you know, kind of wild and wooded. Or the other thing is, like, you know, when you rake those leaves up, maybe you should put them in a bed or somewhere where you can kind of use it as a mulch and not really get rid of all of them. So maybe you'll be able to do it like in a little fashion and then see how it works out, and then kind of go from there. So, I mean, what's also nice about it is if we are able to leave these leaves, we're going to have so much less work to do, right? Because we're not going to be spending all our time raking it now and then waiting for the next batch of leaves. So oftentimes we have to do this about 3 times because of the amount of leaves that fall randomly, not randomly, based on the temperatures and the sunlight and everything. So we'll have less work to do. Also, we often blow it, so we'll be using less gasoline and fossil fuels. And then we'll also be increasing the biodiversity. So, you know, like both of these things, a big part is like rethinking things, like rethinking what is the right way to do it and what is quote unquote manicured or beautiful, you know, so that you're thinking about our habitat and sustainability and biodiversity. And oftentimes what's crazy is that it's actually less work to get more biodiversity and be more sustainable. So it's like a triple win. And I'm all about triple win. So those are just a couple tips. For more information, check out our website, www.gbvg.org, and our Facebook.